Hey guys, welcome to our channel, ASAPinsight, for quick and easy learning. If you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Today we will talk about Introduction to Cranial Nerves. Let us discuss the 12 pairs of cranial nerves and their location in brain. This is the ventral section of brain. The first nerve is the olfactory nerve. This nerve arises from the telencephalon. The second is the optic nerve, also arising from telencephalon. The third nerve is the oculomotor nerve. This nerve arises from the medial aspect of the cerebral peduncle in the posterior part of the interpeduncular fossa. The fourth nerve, trochlea. This also arises from the dorsal aspect of the midbrain, lateral to the median plane. The fifth nerve is the largest nerve, trigeminal nerve. This nerve is attached to the junction of the pons and middle cerebellar peduncle. The sixth nerve is the abducent nerve. This emerges at the inferior border of the pons. The seventh nerve is the facial nerve. It emerges at the inferior border of pons lateral to the abducent nerve. The eighth nerve is the vestibulocochlear nerve. It consists of two nerves, vestibular and cochlear, which are attached in the cerebellopontine angle. The cochlear nerve lies posterior to the inferior cerebellar peduncle and vestibular anterior to it. The ninth nerve is the glossopharyngeal nerve. It emerges by number of rootlets from a groove between the olive and inferior cerebellar peduncle. The 10th is the vagus nerve. This also arises from groove between the olive and inferior cerebellar peduncle below the rootlets of glossopharyngeal nerve. The 11th nerve is the spinal accessory nerve. It has two parts, cranial and spinal. The cranial part emerges by rootlets from medulla below the vagus nerve and is joined by spinal part. The 12th is the hypoglossal nerve, which arises by a row of rootlets from a groove between the pyramid and olive. Let us now see what types these nerves are. The sensory nerves among the 12 are olfactory nerve, optic nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve. The motor nerves constitute oculomotor nerve, abducens nerve, trochlear nerve, accessory nerve, and hypoglossal nerve. The nerves which are both sensory and motor are the mixed nerves: trigeminal nerve, facial nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, and vagus nerve. Let us tell you an interesting way to remember the names of the nerves and the type. For names, remember: Ola is optional. Occupation: takes her to trips around Florida, viewing galleries of very special hotels. And for types of nerves, some say marry men with money, but my brother says big business makes money. Cranial nerve functions. Olfactory nerve, a sensory nerve responsible for generating sense of smell. Optic nerve, it is also sensory nerve responsible for sense of vision. Oculomotor nerve, it supplies the extraocular muscles. The medial rectus, inferior rectus, superior rectus, inferior oblique, and generates eyeball movements. It also supplies levator palpebrae for upper eyelid movement. In addition to this, it also constricts the pupil. Trochlear nerve, it supplies the superior oblique muscle of eye, producing abduction, depression, and internal rotation of eye. Trigeminal nerve is both sensory and motor. It consists of three main branches: V1 ophthalmic branch, responsible for sensation of scalp, forehead, upper eyelid and sinuses, cornea of eye and bridge of nose. V2 branch is responsible for sensation of lower eyelid and sinuses, middle nose, cheeks, upper lips, roof of mouth. V3 branch is both sensory and motor, giving sensations to lower mouth, jaw, chin, middle tongue, and supplying muscles of mastication. Abducent nerve supplies lateral rectus muscle of eye, responsible for lateral rotation. Facial nerve, both sensory and motor in function, gives off taste sensations to anterior 2/3 of tongue and supplies all the facial muscles, stapedius muscle of ear, which dampens sound, along with lacrimation and salivation. Vestibulocochlear nerve, cochlear nerve is responsible for hearing, while vestibular apparatus maintains balance. Glossopharyngeal nerve, mixed nerve, is responsible for taste sensations to posterior 1/3 of tongue, tonsils, middle ear, also staphyloparyngeus muscle and parotid gland. Vagus nerve, again a mixed nerve, is responsible for functions such as swallowing, elevation of palate, cough, gag reflex, peristalsis, sweating, and vasovagal syncope. Spinal accessory nerve. This motor nerve supplies the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid muscles for neck and shoulder movements. Hypoglossal nerve supplies tongue muscles responsible for movements. Let us now introduce you to two brothers. Cranial nerve, spinal nerve. Let us understand how different they are, yet similar. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, 31 pairs of spinal nerves. These innervate structures of head and neck. These innervate structures below neck consist of both motor and sensory components. Same for the spinal nerves. The nerves either sensory or motor arise or exit from the brainstem. The spinal nerves are formed by union of dorsal roots which constitute the sensory and ventral roots which constitute the motor. The motor neurons generate efferent fibers which arise from the nuclei in the brainstem. The motor neurons generate efferent fibers which arise from ventral horn of spinal cord. The sensory neurons generate afferent fibers which arise from the specific area named ganglion. The sensory neurons generate afferent fibers which arise from the dorsal root ganglion. Let us now talk about the functional components of the cranial nerves. As described earlier, the cranial nerves have both motor and sensory fibers. This is the cut section of cortex where alar laminar generates the afferents, while alar basal generates the motor. The afferents or sensory components are of two types: somatic, visceral. Similarly with the motor components. Let's start with motor fibers and their functioning. There are three motor components. The first is GSE, general somatic efferent. This supplies the striated muscles of the limbs and body wall developing from somites. For example, as shown in the diagram of 12th nerve supplying the tongue. The next fiber is the SVE, special visceral efferent. This supplies the striated muscles developing from branchial arches, that is, muscles of facial expression, muscles of palate, pharynx and larynx. Let us understand the pathway of these motor fibers through this depiction. As seen in this picture, A presents the upper motor neuron which is usually located in the cerebral cortex. Their axons travel caudally through the corticobulbar tract to reach the lower motor neuron. B present in the brain stem. The cell bodies of this neuron form the cranial nerve nuclei. The axons that leave the cranial nuclei form the motor component and supply the respective muscles. This is same for GSE fibers. The third fiber is GVE fibers. These supply the glands and smooth muscles of vessels and viscera. These fibers too follow the similar pathway as the SVE and GSE fibers. Here there is a third neuron, that is tertiary neuron. These are formed from the ganglia of the lower motor neuron outside the CNS. They then travel to the target cells in the head, thorax and abdomen. Moving on to sensory fibers. These are 4 in number. Starting with GVA, general visceral afferent, and SVA, special visceral afferent. GVA carry general sensations from the viscera, lung, heart and upper part of GIT and associated glands. While SVA carry special sensation of taste from tongue. Next is special somatic afferent SSA. These carry special senses of hearing and equilibrium to the nuclei. The general somatic afferents GSA carry sensations of pain, touch, temperature and proprioceptive sensations to the nuclei. The sensory pathway can be understood as follows. There are 3 neurons in the sensory pathways. The primary sensory neuron are usually located outside the central nervous system in sensory ganglia. These carry sensations from the respective parts of the body. The axons travel to reach the secondary sensory neuron located in the dorsal and lateral gray matter of the brain stem. These axons usually cross the midline to project to the thalamus where the tertiary neurons are located. These then project to the sensory cortex and synapse with the respective nuclei, which then enables to perceive the sensation. Looking through an overview of the cranial nucleus with corresponding fibers of the cranial nerves along with its functions. This is a detailed chart of all cranial nerves with their corresponding nuclei and fibers and their functions. For further detailed explanation, check out link to this video given in the description box below. Let us now talk about cranial nerve lesions. The structures which when involved results in cranial nerve lesions are: when there is lesion in CNS pathways, lesion at the level of the nuclei, lesion occurring to the nerve itself, lesion at the neuromuscular junction. When such lesions occur, what should we infer? When there is a unilateral cranial nerve lesion or multiple cranial nerve lesion. In a unilateral cranial nerve abnormality, the common pathology seen is contralateral hemiplegia or tetraplegia. If this is present, then it indicates third nerve palsy. If this is not seen, then it could be combined pathology of 5th, 7th and 8th nerves. If the third nerve is affected, then it is suggestive of midbrain lesion. If third nerve is not involved, then it could be combined 6th and or 7th. If yes, then it indicates pontine lesions. If 6th and or 7th is not involved, then it could be 12th and or 9th and 11th nerves. If yes, then suggestive of medullary lesions. However, as said, if contralateral hemiplegia or tetraplegia is not seen, it could be due to combined 5th, 7th and 8th nerves, indicative of cerebellopontine lesion. If this is not involved, then it could be combined 3rd, 6th and 5th nerves. If yes, then indicative of cavernous sinus lesion. If no, then it could be combined 9th, 10th and 11th nerves. If yes, then suggestive of jugular foramen syndrome. That's it for today. See you in the next video. Please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.